Hi, this video is going to be about making sequence stutter effects in Bitwig's effects grid. And this video is a follow-up to a video I made a couple of years ago about doing the same thing. But when I made that video, there were some things I didn't understand about this, and so that patch had some problems. So in this video, I'm going to be showing a better way to do it that works more accurately. So this is the patch. So the way that this works is that each one of these orange bars determines how many retrigs there will be per step. And so the higher up you go, the faster it will be. And then each one of these determines at what point it's going to be recorded. So at what point the sound gets recorded into the buffer for the retrigs. So if I play this with no stutters, you'll hear the dry beat. And then if I just draw in some random retrigs. All right. And then before I get into building this, I want to explain the main problem between this patch and the old one. So in the old patch, I didn't understand that you have to delay the switch over from the dry sound to the recorder devices. So this is done with recorder devices. And if you don't delay the switch over to the recorder devices, what happens is that when you trigger the play input on the recorder devices, it will play what was in the previous buffer. So it messes it up. So if you hear this, so on this beat, the snare is on this step. So we should hear only the snare repeat right now. So you see that that's working. And then if I add one right here, add some retrigs here, we'll hear the snare repeat, and then we'll hear the perk sound over here repeat. So you see that sounds clean, and then it doesn't matter how many retrigs we have, it will just play those sounds. All right. So if I compare that to the old patch, where did I put it? Is this it? Okay, yeah. So I dug up the old patch from that video from a couple of years ago. This is it. So in this one, the snare is on the third step, but the problem is you'll hear that when I play it, it's going to be silent on the first instance of retrigs because there's nothing in their buffer yet. And then after the first instance, it'll play the snare. So you see that it totally messes up the groove. But I mean, it will keep playing the snare now. Like if I remove these, you'll just hear the snare repeating. But again, on the first time, it's not going to play anything because there's nothing in the buffer yet. And if there was something in the buffer, it would play that sound first. So that's the main issue. But before I get into building this, I'm not sure if I'm going to get into all the sequencers and stuff because I just want to focus on the retrigs. If anybody wants to see how all these sequencers are set up, I could do a video about it. I've done some videos in the past about how I link up sequencers, but I always do it a little bit differently. And on this, when I'm running an effects unit as opposed to to a synth, sometimes it's a little bit trickier because all right, this will be just a slight off topic thing, but you want the sequencers to sync up with the song position. So like when I'm starting at 1, I want it to trigger there. When I'm starting at 2, at this rate, I think it'll be here. Yep. If I'm starting at 3, it should be at sequencer 5. So that's not too hard to set up just that, but then once you start adding other features, it can become a little complicated. So like, I like to have, for example, options for different rates. So like, that's repeating one sequencer over and over again. This will that repeats 2 sequencers over again, and so on. And then I want that to work also across different rates. All right, so so if the video, I might get into it on this video. Let's see how long things run. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move on and make this thing. So I'm going to copy the beat to a new track, grab an effects grid, And so, like I was saying, this is done with recorder devices. So if you go to the delay section, wherever it went, here it is. I'm going to put two of them because the recorder module is a mono module. And so if you're running this stereo, then you want to run it like this. So you'll run the input into here, run the left into the top one, right into the bottom one, and these are going into the center input on these recorder modules. And then these will just run into here, which is the merge module. And so this gets the stereo information working right. And now as for the retrigs, so yeah, I'm not going to do anything fancy with sequencers right now. Let's just start with a basic 8-step sequence. So this one will be the recorder. This one will be the retrig. I'm going to turn off these pre-chords. I'm going to put this one on trigger mode. And then I'm going to have these controlled by a transport. And then one thing I like to do is run my transport or whatever is controlling the main phase into a select module, to the bottom input, and then have whatever's triggering, whatever's starting the sequence running into here, which in this case will be the transport playing. And then this will run into these. One reason I like to do that is because I think it helps prevent errors in the grid. Because sometimes if you have the sequence free running, when you first hit play on a note or you first press play on a sequence, sometimes if it's free playing, if it's free running, it might get stuck on the last like the last part of the sequence that was hit if it doesn't jump back in time, and then it'll just mess it up. It won't start correctly. So I think that this helps fix that. So anyway, this can run into the record input. And then you'll notice it's recording long sequences. If you wanted to cut that off and only have it recording, for example, when we're playing, we could do the same thing and run this off the transport play. Okay. So this is what needs to control the retrigs. So what I'm going to do is get a scalar device. And since we have 8 steps, we want I want the slowest rate for it to be basically the exact same as if it was off. So I'll run that here, and then let's get a merge. Put it on nearest. Put it at 8. This is going to be controlled by here, and this is where all the inputs are going to go. So let's get another scalar. I'm just going to duplicate the rate each time. So run that into here. And then run each one into the one below it. So it's just doubling the rate each time because we're at 2/1. And then wire all these in. And then let's run it into another data. What I'm going to do, this might seem a little strange, but I'm going to put this at 64 steps and have all of them off but the last one. What that's going to do is it's basically going to give us a gate that's just shorter than a full step on the 8-step sequence, and which will basically act the same way as trigger mode. But one thing I kind of like to do this sometimes because, for example, if you want to have options of different gate lengths, you could run several of these into a merge and then have, one of them that's like half length like this and one of them. So you can have different options. So just to kind of give myself the opportunity to do that later down down this patch, I'm going to run it like this. So this can get run into the play input. And we're still going to have this issue that I was talking about earlier, but I'm going to get to that. So then I usually like when it's at 0 for it to just be the dry sound. So let's make a rule that says that if it's greater than 0, or in this case we'll say if it's greater or equal to 0.01. So if this is greater than 0.1, then it will trigger a select. second input of the select will be the recorders. This will be the retrigger. So now the basic retrig, how I had it before, will work, but you're going to hear it's going to have this same problem. Okay, so the snare at this rate is on the third step. So if I do this, what we should hear, well here, let me put it on the here. What we should hear is that it's going to play a kick and then the snares, because it's going to first play the kick that gets recorded right here, and then it's not going to switch over until the second repeat. So you see, it totally messes up the groove. So to fix that, it's actually pretty simple. If you grab a counter, let's bring it to 64. Let's run this into here. I don't totally remember what I had triggering the main gate input for the counter, so I'm gonna run it from here for now. If that doesn't work, I might need to rewire it because I don't totally remember how I had this set up. But what the counter is going to do is every time this cycles around, it's going to increase its phase by 1 over 64, or by 1 divided by 64. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that if this level out of the counter is greater or equal to 1 divided by 64, and then we'll run that. That'll just be like an additional rule for opening up this select. So we'll just grab an and run that over here. And that'll fix this to a degree. So now when I hit play, it should just start on the snare. So you see that's working correctly now. So now anywhere where I trigger one of these, it'll only play that step. Okay, so that's working right to a degree, but there's one problem, and that's that this is only going up to 64 steps, but at the fastest rate, we go to 128 steps. So I can show you how to fix that. This part's a little bit more complicated, and it's not totally necessary because when you're going that fast, you often don't even hear it because like the difference between 1/128th of a step is so small, but sometimes it can create like a pop and a click in there. So I'll show you how to fix this. This part, I always do it differently because I've tried all these different ways of doing it. So sometimes I might fumble over this a little bit. So if I forget what I'm doing or make any mistakes on this one, just bear with me. So I'm going to multiply this by 2. I'm going to get 2 of these. I'm going to delete the last step on here. And then I want to alternate these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that if this value is less than 1, let's run it into here. If this value is less than 1, we'll grab select. We'll run this into here. We'll control this by there. And then we'll say if this value, or if the same value is more or equal to 1, then we'll open up the second select. So this should alternate them. Okay. And then I'm trying to remember how I had the timing. So let's try this. Let's grab a select, run these into here. Maybe I'll use a scalar for this. Run that out of here. And let's say that if this is greater than, let's put a reset on this too. We'll run that off the same thing over here. And let's say that if this value here is greater than 0.5, or equal or greater than 0.5, then we want to open this select because we want this select to be at half the Yeah, that looks like it's working correctly. Okay, so now we only need to switch into this setup on the last step because there's the 1 over 128 only happens over here. So let's say that if this value, and again, I know this looks a little complicated and there might be simpler ways to do all this. I've like I said, every time I do this, I do it a little bit differently. So there's definitely different ways to go about this, but this is the way I just set it up on the patch I was doing earlier tonight. So I'm just going to do it like this. So let's say that if this is more than 1 minus 1 divided by 8, then that will trigger a select that will go into the input of the counter. So that will trigger it to be this second setup. And then let's see if that sounds correct. So I'm gonna turn the volume down on this a little bit because sometimes when you get into these really fast retrigs, it can be really high pitched. So okay, so if it's working correct, we shouldn't hear a click. So I'm gonna slow this down a little bit just to make sure it's working. Or here, let's do this. Let's put this at like 64, or let's put it at 32 and see if it works. Yeah, so that's working. There's no click and there's no delay. It's playing the right sound. So that setup works. So yeah. All right, yeah. So everything works correctly in here. So that's basically all I wanted to go. And then yeah, this video is already 17 minutes, so I'm not going to get into the whole. I'm not going to build the sequencers right now, but here I can give you a rundown real quick of just what's going on here. Because if you've watched some of my videos in the past, you've probably seen the way I like to set up my sequencers. So the simplest way that you would link up multiple of them would be to have a slow phase that's running into the control, which is this input, on a merge, or actually on a split. And then you would run a phase that's 1/8 the speed, so you could use a scalar, or you could multiply it and use there's different ways to do it. But anyway, if you ran just a 1/8 the speed with a scalar, you would run each of the outputs into one of these sequencers, and then that would work. That would have it all synced up. And I know in the past I've said that the merge modules create errors. Lately it's been all right for me, so I don't know what was going on back then. But anyway, that would work. But if you started to add other features like a length change, you would run into problems. So like I was saying, I like to have the option to play, for example. Oh, it's so loud. So I like to be able to repeat one. Oh, it's so fast. So I like to have that option of different rates. If you were doing this on a merge module, one way you could do that would be to have a reset on the slow phase that's going into the control input. You could say, for example, if I wanted the length to be one sequencer, I would have that reset if the phase is more than 1/8. But the problem is that once you start resetting that main phase, it starts throwing everything off. So then, for example, you might hit play at the beginning of the sequence and it doesn't start on the right sequencer because it's been reset at these different points. And then, so you could fix that by just having a reset that's assigned to the transport play. But the problem with that is that then every time you hit play, it's going to start at the beginning. And so if you're trying to hone in on a specific section, so if at bar 3 and I want it to start at a specific place, that won't work. So because of that, I am basically doing one of these kind of logic sequencers that I always do. But you can see, because of that, everything works correctly. If I start at these different points, it starts where it's supposed to. And even if I'm changing the rates and the lengths and all that, it still works. And yeah, so I mean, if you've seen any of my videos, on sequencers in the past, you would know how this whole sequencer setup works. But in terms of the length knob is what controls this division. So if it's at 1, it's going to be 1. If it's at 8, so it determines what's all being divided over here. And then the length knob also runs into this merge, which selects between these different transports. And notice I'm not using any scalars. I've noticed that when you use scalars within the controls of these sequencers, sometimes it just messes things up. It throws things off. And then you need to have resets. And then again, like I was saying, the resets mess things up because it throws things off the song position. So because of that, I was avoiding it. I'm just using transports, multiple of them that go in here, and that's the length option. And then the rate option is just this modulator here that's assigned to all of these. And that's being run by this merge, which has these different values. So this is being controlled by the rate knob. And so that is able to change the rate. As you can see, if I start in the beginning, so that's really fast, and you go really slow too. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm running a little bit more of a complicated setup with Logic than just using merge modules and split modules and stuff to control all these sequencers. But yeah, this video is already over 20 minutes, so if you want to see me build that, I can do that on another video. And then I might make another video possibly extending this whole thing to show like further things you can do with a patch like this, because right now we just have it doing retriggers. But I showed a video the other day showing some of my like current kind of glitch patches that I'm trying to compile some patches to put out as a pack or something like that. So I can show you, like, this was an example of this step sequencer patch. Throw a name in over here. And this patch, oops, here, let me zoom out. This patch is the same kind of retrigger, but then you have this lane that lets you morph between different snapshots of effects. So you can get up to 24 different snapshots that can be divided between 1 and 6 effects. You can hear what that does. So yeah, I have it really quiet just so it doesn't come on all loud over my voice. But yeah, I can maybe make a video showing how you could add some of those features to a stutter setup like the one we built in this video. So let me know if you're interested in seeing that. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.